Right, folks, the moment we've all been waiting for, the award ceremony. We are all winners for having attended RSS this year. And we will start with Best Student Paper Award. Here are our finalists. So we have Iterative Residual Policy for Goal-Conditioned Dynamic Manipulation of Deformable Objects. If the authors can please come to the stage. ACID, Action Conditional Implicit Visual Dynamics for Deformable Object Manipulation. Parameterized Differential Dynamic Programming. And AK, Attentive Kernel for Information Gathering. We're building up the suspense. All right, let's give them all a round of applause. And the winner of the Best Student Paper Award is... Nope. AK, Attentive Kernel for Information Gathering. And Kris, you want to stay with them for a photo? All right, thank you. Okay, let's draw this out. It's got to be like the Oscars. Okay. The finalists for the Best Systems Paper Award, which is awarded in memory of Seth Teller. Here we have Dexterity, Deformable Manipulation Can Be a Breeze. Viking, Vision-Based Kilometer Scale Navigation with Geographic Hints. Resilient multi-sensor exploration of multifarious environments with a team of aerial robots. And autonomously untangling long cables. And the winner is autonomously untangling long cables. Okay, thank you. And now, the nominees for Best Paper Award. All right, we have Iterative residual policy for goal-conditioned dynamic manipulation of deformable objects. Flowbot 3D, learning 3D articulation flow to manipulate articulated objects. You only demonstrate once category level manipulation from single visual demonstration. DIPCAN, 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 distilling privileged information for crowd-aware navigation. And multi-robot adversarial resilience using control barrier functions. And the winner of the Best Paper Award is Iterative Residual Policy for Goal-Conditioned Dynamic Manipulation of Deformable Objects. Congratulations to everyone, all the finalists.
All right, well, thank you everyone for all of your great papers. I have to say that there are fantastic papers, even that were not nominated. We have a very, well, the secret of a program committee is that it's a very noisy process, and there are fantastic papers throughout all of our papers. So I'd like to kind of move on to some acknowledgments. We have had a lot of people working hard on making this a successful conference. There was a lot of uncertainty about how this conference was going to play out due to COVID. Even within just a few months ago, we didn't know if we would have that banquet cruise. I am so glad we did, because that was like the perfect day. You know, it's the most beautiful day we could possibly have hoped for. But in any case, there were lots of people who were working on this very hard. First of all, from the kind of program side of things, the paper program, I want to thank all of our reviewers. Many of you are in this room. We had 370 reviewers, something like 700 reviews, and also hundreds of emergency reviews, which we could not have had this program without all of your emergency help. So a big, big thank you to all of those reviewers. Let's give them a big round of hand. Round of a hand of applause. So these are just all of their names. You can't read any of them. It's okay. Oh, what? Okay, we switch to the screen. Okay. Yeah, you still can't read them. So. Another extremely important part of the review process were the area chairs. We had 25 area chairs for the conference. Area chairs are responsible for assigning reviews to papers, giving reports to papers, hopefully assigning some of their expertise to the whole review process. And without their expertise and sage advice, we wouldn't have the same quality of papers that we do and expect at an RSS conference. So let's give them a round of applause. And if you're an area chair, please stand up. No area chairs? We have a couple. I know Kostas is an area chair. There we go. There we go. There we go. Kris, yep. All right. All right, and we had a fantastic organizing committee. I'm going to name some of them one by one. So Xiaodong is here, and his work is yet to begin as he goes. Well, he did a bit of work putting up the program, and he will be inviting many of you to invite full journal versions of your papers. So we're going to be working on that. Florian Schruti was amazing at helping with the registrations. He was active throughout this whole thing, set up the Feedloop site, and he is just an amazing guy. Florian, are you here? Stand up if you are. There you are. Let's give him a round of applause. Alberto Rodriguez is our sponsorship chair. Without him, we couldn't. He's the rainmaker, I guess. He really did an amazing job working with our sponsors and making sure that they had also good time themselves. We see many of them in this room, and he did a great job. Let's give him a round of applause. Luca Carlone, our publicity chair, could not make it, but he's been on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and doing all sorts of social media blasts. He's been doing a great job too. Let's give him a round of applause. Yuka Zhu has been working on the website behind the scenes as well. He couldn't be here. He was supposed to be here, but he got COVID from CVPR, so we'll have to, hopefully he's watching on YouTube. He actually did a great job of alerting me to, I guess, some spammers on YouTube just a half hour ago. So Yuka, if you're watching, thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. I said that RSS is my favorite conference, but actually my favorite part of my favorite conference, when we're not having an amazing banquet, is the workshops. I love the workshops, and Sharon and Katya have been doing a great job. Let's give them a round of applause. Their job is not over either. We've had a great program for inclusion at RSS. We have Henny, who is still, Henny is here still, maybe? No? Back there, all the way back there, waving from the seated. Let's give her a round of applause. And also Kalisha Bullard as well. Kalisha here? I haven't seen Kalisha. Okay. All right. And we had, I guess, really, really great feedback from RSS pioneers. You saw some of the photos if you're here during the break. Ali Harake and Nivi Kalavakanda did a fantastic job. Let's give them a round of applause. So here's just a couple of pictures from pioneers. I heard really great things. Matei was saying he heard just as many positive remarks from pioneers as he did about the banquet, which is amazing because pioneers had about 40 people there. So a lot of great feedback there. I'd also like to thank our head honchos, so our general chair, Dylan Schell, and our foundation president, RSS Foundation president, Hadas Kress-Gazit, who are sitting here in the front row. If you guys want to stand up, let's give them a big round of applause for their sage advice. Mostly sitting back and telling us what to do from on high. My assistant, Abigail Barrett, helped many of you with your visa letters, so a round of applause for her, she's probably not watching, but it's okay. She'll watch the recording on YouTube, perhaps. And last but not least, we have had, well, in my opinion, a very successful RSS, and probably 99% of that goes to our, the next two slides. You guys are 99% of what we owe the success of RSS to. First of all, the volunteers have done an amazing job. If there are any volunteers in the room, please stand up so we can all recognize you. You've helped with everything from registration, posters. You guys are the unsung heroes of RSS. Photos, AV, they have been indispensable to RSS. And the other folks who have been completely indispensable to RSS are our local arrangements chairs, Matei Ciocarlie, Yev Yesolivsky, and also doing double duty is actually Sharon Song. She has helped out tremendously with all of the workshops and also local arrangements. These guys they're the men and women who make this all possible. So let's give them a humongous round of applause. And I'm being pushed aside here.
Pushed aside, yes. So, hi everyone, I'm Hadas Kress-Gazit. You just saw my huge head there. So we don't have a slide, but we have the person right here. So, so for people who don't know, RSS tends to be very, very, very much program chair run. So local arrangements, oh my gosh. But also the amount of work that goes into creating this kind of conference and this program, from the review process to working with the ACs, working with local arrangements, deciding on what the program would look like, speakers, and all other things that happen are the PC's responsibility. And Kris has done a phenomenal job. And I would just like to, I know you clapped, but let's do that again. So thank you so much, Kris.
Thanks so much for the kind words, Hadas, and yeah, thank all of you for making this great as well. We couldn't have done it without you. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about RSS 2023, and excuse me for 1 second while I grab my phone that's charging because I have an very official thing to say. Okay, as Hadas said, the program chair is one of the most important roles at RSS, deciding on many of the details of everything that goes on with RSS, and we do need to announce next year's program chair. I don't have a drum roll, but this would be an appropriate place to do it. So next, the drum roll for next year's program chair is Kostas Bekris of Rutgers University. So what's really important here at RSS is this a ceremony that we've kind of lost this over COVID, but this is something that's really essential to the success of RSS, which is the transfer of the ceremonial program chair Hawaiian shirt. So, Kostas, do you solemnly swear to sincerely carry out the duties of program chair and uphold the rigorous academic standards and sacred traditions of the RSS conference? Hold your hand up and say.
I do.
Do you swear to proudly wear the ceremonial program chair's Hawaiian shirt in honor of Nick Roy, which is essential to your duties as program chair?
Very essential, I do.
Do you swear, as required by your duties as program chair, to wear a Hawaiian or floral shirt each day for the following year until the next program chair is announced?
If you see me without one, you have to complain.
Yeah, you have to complain to Hadas if you don't see him with one. All right. Well, thank you, Kostas. And do you want to announce the local arrangements chairs?
Yeah, well, let me first say that, as Hadas said, amazing job. It raises the level of stress. You come here in the control room during the entire conference, and thank you again for all of the work and everyone that has organized RSS. So where are we going next year? Daeju, Korea, June 23, 28, approximate dates, 2023. And this is going to be the first RSS in Asia. And we're looking forward to a great experience, an amazing, convenient venue. It is an area that is a technology hub for Korea, experience, Korean culture, and with a strong industrial support. So local arrangement co-chairs, Hanlim Choi from KAIST and Haiwon Park. And there's going to be a big team in Korea supporting them. So a great round of applause as well for them and all the work that they will have to do.
Okay, so that's we're perfectly on time. This is great. So we have a little bit of time for the town hall, which is one of my well, a highlight for me because I get to hear from all of you. So Hadas and Dylan will be chairing this, but first I'm going to say a couple of words just from the review process, just to give you a little bit of context of. You know, I mentioned a few questions at the beginning of the day. Many of you were nursing hangovers from the banquet, but I'll give you some statistics and also rehash some of those questions. So let me just give you some statistics. So we had 232 submissions. We had some desk rejects, and 74 were ultimately accepted. This is a 32% acceptance rate. And one thing that is one tidbit is that we did have about a 20% decrease in papers, both submitted and accepted, from 2021. Whether this is a trend or not, I think we had similar sorts of trends in ICRA, but not shared with all conferences, actually, which we'll talk about. So we have a very US-heavy conference. If you look at the number of submissions, about 145 were from the US. If you break this down by continent, we do have a fair degree of European and Asian submissions, but definitely this is a North American-centric conference, something to think about. Just in terms of the process, area chairs chose 3 reviews. We try to make sure that we have high quality reviews from our reviewers. We urge the area chairs to contact all of the reviewers if they don't have kind of sufficiently detailed responses to the papers. This works sometimes, and sometimes we have fantastic reviews, and sometimes we don't. I've had already some people complain about the quality of some of their reviews, and this is something that's very hard to control from my point of view. It really requires the reviewers to actually contribute that level of inspection and depth and feedback that we hope for. So even though the amount of word counts, the word counts in our reviews is relatively good, there's a huge standard deviation both above and below this. This year we chose to have an author rebuttal stage that was only seen by the area chair. This is because in previous years we found that having an author rebuttal tends to have sort of a contentious effect between the paper author and the reviewers, and the reviewers get entrenched, and so we thought that the area chair could use some of their kind of expertise and perspective to kind of put that rebuttal, it has sort of like a referee, kind of treat it from a third perspective. So we also have an area chair meeting, and discussion of your papers can sometimes be extremely extensive, and some of you who have been nominated for Best Paper Awards have had strong rejects as the first decision on your paper because of shoddy reviews. And so during the area chair meeting, we try to actually get the kernel of truth or scientific value out from your papers, and sometimes we have multiple readings. Even your area chairs work very hard to try to read your paper and see if it's actually, the reviews are actually valid. It's a very, very hard job, and the spread of our paper review scores is very small. So around 3 to 3.5, that's kind of on the low. 2.5 is high. We've got this range of 1 holds 90% of our papers. 1 score plus or minus 3 plus or minus 0.5. So it's a very, very hard job, and finding signal from the noise is very hard. Okay, so that's kind of the context from the review side of things, and we welcome questions and comments about the review process. There's also other topics that I raised in the morning. Many of you were kind of in bed trying to sleep off a hangover or something, but in any case, we have some questions like, how do we ensure high quality reviewing? How do we value systems research? Even though we do have Best Systems Paper Award, we still do not have that many papers on field robotics, on mechanisms, on engineering-focused papers. Learning papers, as I've heard from many of you, seem to be dominating RSS, and if you look at if you go back here, learning is the first or second keyword in about 2/3 of our submitted papers and about 2/3 of our accepted papers. All the other topics are a little bit lower on that list, and some of them are almost not represented at all. So how do we kind of balance our focus on learning research versus other fields that are not really seen here at RSS? Another thing that we could talk about, I don't know if it's part of the scope of this discussion, but we have a lot of social change in the world nowadays, and is robotics, if this is the right venue to talk about how that's affecting our field? Where, if not, where should we talk about that? Well, I'll leave it up to you guys to find out. So, all right, well, so with that, I have nothing else, and we'll turn it over to Hadas and Dylan.
Thank you, Kris. So the purpose of this session is not really for us to talk at you. Kris made the joke that, he received instructions from upon high, but it's not very high. This is as high as it goes. The purpose of RSS is to have something where actually we can remain engaged with the needs of the community and we can be responsive to what people think. And so this session is intended to be a moment when we go to each of the microphones and have anyone in the audience who has something they'd like to say, and it can be anything from something you were happy about, it can be a response to any of these talking points, it can be something that you think was not handled particularly well, or should we say is an opportunity for improvement next time. Any of these things are things that now is the time to bring up, and if you're going to drag us over the coals, we can also respond in some cases if we think that that's appropriate. But really, this is more for us to listen than for us to go back and respond. So, David, do you want to take it away?
Sure, yeah. It's kind of just a minor thing to kick things off, but I noticed there wasn't an award for outstanding reviewers, and other conferences often do have such an award. I've heard from some grad students that it can sometimes be a motivating factor for them to put a little bit of extra effort, because if people see they got an outstanding reviewer award, then that's recognition that they want. And it also is just a nice way to recognize those people who put extra effort into their reviews. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I can honestly say I forgot. So I apologize for that. There's a lot of sort of things that we're focusing on besides that, but that's a really good thing to try to use. But I think there is also a broader discussion about how do we encourage high quality reviews, and that's one sort of recognition. I don't know if there's other ideas that people have.
All right, thank you everyone for an amazing conference. All right, a little closer. All right, there we go. That's significantly different. Thank you for taking these questions. All right, so on the last point, sustaining the health of our field. COVID, I had to help a lot of students find mental health care during COVID. First time depression. A student in our school killed himself. It's bad. I think it's really awesome that we use the legacy of Seth Teller to honor strong work in robotics and systems. I wonder if we should also be thinking about what we should do to make sure that nobody else takes their life by suicide. Should there be a Seth Teller award for mental health robotics, or a Seth Teller fellowship for exploring mental health in RSS? I think that's to start a long conversation. I know that's a very challenging topic for a lot of people who loved him, who knew him. I saw the grief of the students at MIT when we found out. And I don't mean to discredit any effort that anyone's doing to try to remember him, but I think it's an important topic that we should also be discussing. Thank you.
Hi, Jeffrey Herman from the University of Maryland. On the issue of reviewers, if determining a best reviewer is perhaps too much effort or too difficult, perhaps we can just acknowledge good reviewers with something like a gold star or something, giving them a special recognition. And the second point was, I was wondering if it'd be possible for this conference to provide a forum for researchers to bring and show off their actual robots. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are a couple of ideas I've never seen floated anywhere else. think there's the sorts of things we have to mull on a little bit. But I also know who asked those questions, so those might be people that I'll follow up with.
I think there are two things here, right? So there's what Matthew talked about, which is more systemic, I think, that needs to be, it's an interesting conversation to have at the board level, and this is more of a board level thing, I would say, as opposed to the other comment about displaying your robots, which I think that is something that might be worth kind of thinking about next year in terms of kind of, I don't know if, shipping and all that, but local arrangements and space and those considerations that can come into play, and some places it would be some places it will be easier to do, some places it would not be easier to do. So I think I really appreciate both ideas.
And I think there were a few instances where, there was a talk earlier this afternoon with, here's a system that I brought with me, come to my poster and you can see it. And the dexterity paper, which was playing the home field advantage, said come to the lab and you'll be able to see our robots actually working. I think that might have to do a little with this theme of trying to make sure we do take the robot systems part very seriously. So I think we should think about that carefully. Of course, in other conferences, one of the ways you wander around and you see physical robots is you see either exhibitors, which sometimes we've had at RSS, but it does depend on location, or competitions. So we've never, ever had any competitions affiliated with RSS. And we don't currently have a way for anyone to propose to do such a thing. So perhaps that's the thing we need to address there.
So we have a question at the top.
Hi, thank you for the great conference. So one of the points that I'm not exactly sure what the action item is, but this conference in particular, there were a lot of first-time conference goers, mostly because the pandemic sort of delayed the first conference of many new grad students. And this is sort of always true that we want to facilitate the first conference and make it easier for people to join in with the community. But I've seen a lot more discussion about concrete ways that we can help people self-organize around interest areas. And I think I would like to see if that's a thing that we would like to make more concrete in the future. But also, I think with the experience of having virtual conferences for a little while, I think it's important to think about ways to make that, or continue to make that accessible to people who aren't already present at the conference. And so I didn't get the sense that there was a lot of deliberate conversation in advance about the fact that there was a lot of new people, but this might be an opportunity to talk to a lot of people who had that experience at this conference and consider options for the future.
You're bringing great points, and I've observed this also with my students, how to explain how the experience of a conference in person is. And the other aspect that you brought up, which is, you now have the opportunity to meet some people that perhaps work in the same area, and you have the opportunity to interact with them. There are workshops that are happening around RSS, and I think, consider submitting applications next year together with people that perhaps you met here and you have common interests. These are great events where you can really focus and dive deeper into a specific sub-area and have very interactive discussions.
Two comments. First, with respect to bringing robots here, I don't know if anyone saw the Unitree robot dancing last night, but some people are bringing their robots. Second comment actually kind of dovetails on the last, although I was thinking about this previously. We had a format this time in which we wanted to have the speakers that were present and giving short talks, give a talk over a pre-recorded video. And I think we're all kind of grappling with the fact that we have this heritage now of Zoom conferences. And I think that it's great that we still are continuing to allow people to come remotely and attend and give their talks. I don't think that we should eliminate that, but I think we may consider adjusting the format for short talks And by that I mean, I think that having the person just talk over pre-recorded slides brings them a little bit closer to as if they were a remote member of our speaking cohort, and we might consider just having 2 podiums up or something like this, and one with the 5-minute talk, and it goes to the next one, and we've seen this model work previously where the mic gets cut off after 5 minutes. And that would help some of the cadence issues that the people who came to give a short talk actually had issues with maybe keeping track exactly with when their slides were advancing. That would give us all a different experience in that short talk. Just something to consider.
So Kris, actually the recorded talks predates COVID, right? So this happened, I think, since 2017. Definitely happened in MIT, but so yeah, so we hear you. Kostas is going to take that into account. But the nice thing about it used to be, before we had the pre-recorded slides, there was a gong, which had its own charm. But you know, people got gonged off the stage. But I think this kind of keeps a good cadence. So yeah.
It also simplifies. You know, there is a motivation also to put everything on one laptop, and make sure that this is the you know, local organizers' infrastructure. Everything will be working beforehand, and you're not going to have these issues. Oh, is my laptop working or not? There are things to balance, but I get your point, and I think you know, I've seen also the dual podium work very well.
And I will say, although maybe people don't know this, there were a few teething issues, because I know there were 2 versions of videos that were submitted, and at least 2 speakers mentioned to me that the previous timing video had been played, and they were quite good at elongating some words and speeding up some others to kind of catch up. But that may have been why it was perhaps a little rougher in some cases, not the speaker, but in fact we may have played the wrong version of the video in this case.
Yeah, that's somewhat my fault for choosing Google Forms for submitting your videos. It's really a nightmare. So Kostas, don't do that. We have a question up at the top. Or comment.
Hi. So I think that one of the things that makes RSS such a great community and conference is the quality of the reviewing experience. And one of the things I was pretty surprised pleasantly about on the first day of the conference was seeing just how many people are new to the community, how many people this is their first conference that they're attending. And one of the things I wanted to kind of put out there to maybe sustain this high quality is to see if there's interest in starting a reviewer mentor program, kind of similar to iClear's reviewer mentorship program that they started, I think this year for their conference. And I guess the question out to the folks on stage would be, like, is this something that you have any interest in supporting? And the question to all the folks who are sitting down is, if you are, you know, perhaps a seasoned reviewer, would you be interested in being a mentor?
Let me just ask a separate question, since I'm blinded by the lights. Is that Brad?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, Brad is.
All right. Good. Well, I think it's an excellent idea. But I think we need someone perhaps who might lead that, and now I know who now we have a name. That was a bit flippant, but I do think it's something, I think it's one thing for us to say that we would like better reviewers, but we have to do something to improve the review process. And it is definitely, I mean, any of us who go through the process of teaching grad students know it's a skill that you learn, and a very valuable skill, and so I think something a little more structured like that would be quite valuable. I don't know too much about the iClear process, so I can't comment on that, but maybe someone else.
Yeah, and I was ready to say, you know, any information that you have on what happened at iClear, please forward it to me so as to look over it. And anyone here in the audience that feels excited about reviewing next year, either on the junior side, and then they would perhaps appreciate some mentoring in the process and they have not done it before, or some of the more senior members of the community that would like to, you know, to keep a very high standard for RSS, that to be involved in this process, feel free to reach out to me.
Was there, you have a follow-up question? Oh, it was a thumbs up, okay.
That was a thumbs up. I was also thinking that a number, especially of the graduate students who were out last night, probably got their IROS reviews while they were, having fun. And so if you are a senior graduate student or a PI who is also maybe not super pleased about some of the things that you saw, this is our chance to fix those problems here before they start.
Absolutely. Hi. Yeah, as a grad student, I've come across the problem where if I want to write good papers, right? If I want to write a good paper, I just read good papers to get better at it, right? I read some great papers from RSS, from Micra, and when I think about writing great reviews, like there aren't any good sources for it. There's like openreview.net, but that's kind of a limited source and kind of like a limited field. Like how to write a great review for robotics, there aren't any sources that have great reviews that have been done before. So maybe a good suggestion would be not only just nominating a great reviewer as a prize, but also providing some samples of like great reviews that we received this conference. As an example, like say, you want to write a great review, here's a few examples. These were very informative because of this or that, and that's a great way to educate new reviewers, I think.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, we have to be a little careful about preserving anonymity, right? One of the things that we try to keep we do the best we can is to preserve the double-blind format for the conference, but I mean, it may be something we can do there, or perhaps there's a statute of limitations where we can show an earlier review or something. Yeah, or consent, yes.
Yeah, I just had a point following up on that because I was thinking similar things, especially for systems papers. I've been reviewing, oh, you can't hear. Can you hear me? Okay.
You just tilt it.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to follow up because I was thinking very similar things for systems papers. I've been reviewing papers for many years, but I still find it very hard to review systems papers. My instinct is always to look for the technical novelty. And I know systems papers just have different evaluation criteria. So yeah, if there were at the least some guidelines of how should we review systems papers, but from talking to, I have a friend who works in learning science, and looking at examples is often one of the best ways to figure out how to do something. So yeah, maybe if we do release reviews, it would be good to have, if we do have some example good reviews, if we could have example good reviews for a, whatever non-systems paper is called, and then also systems paper reviews.
I'll say that's quite humbling. If David Held is saying he has difficulty reviewing a systems paper, that shows you that's a hard task, right? So.
Hi, thank you for hosting the RSS. So I have a small suggestion about the presentation of the paper. So when I attended ICRA this year, so they're using a system called InfoVia. So basically it's a website that you can content the video, you can submit the posters, you can also submit the bullet points of the papers so that the people can also take a look at the website and get more information about the work. So I think RSS already have a very good website, but I'm just wondering if it's possible to content more like a multimedia material in the period, in the next year. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll say a few things about that. So there is, of course, roboticsconference.org, which is the RSS conference, and then there's the roboticsproceedings.org, which is because all the proceedings are all available, right? And proceedings.org does not hold any multimedia content. It does have some additional information, but it doesn't have multimedia content. There is some multimedia content in supplementary papers, and there's some through the YouTube channels over the years, but they've never been fully integrated, which I recognize. We had a little bit of a discussion about this earlier at the board because there's some questions about then it's moving from a proceedings to something else. So we need to think about that a little more. But it's something on our radar that we need to do better. But I don't think we figured out exactly how we're going to do that. We can ask Hadas, wearing her other hat as ICRA program chair, if she has any thoughts on InfoVia, but maybe some thoughts, but maybe she won't share any of them. So.
I mean, yeah, InfoVia is another system as FeedLoop is, right? So the choice of which system you use has some of those properties. This is something that typically we leave it to discussion. Well, COVID changed a bunch of things. So in 2020, when in March, we basically had to decide that we're not going to have RSS in Oregon. Then we had to find something quick. So feed loop came up in that. And then we've been using that, I think it was successful last year. I think it's successful this year, even though we're not quite, we're in person again. So the question of which kind of conference app to use is a good question. It comes with a lot of cost as well. And kind of one of the things that we try to do at RSS is to keep the cost as low as possible. I realize kind of, it could always be lower, but we still need to not, lose money. So there's a bunch of things. But InfoVia has some really good properties that we should take a look and see kind of what are the things that are worth keeping. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
It is not painless, let's put it that way.
So one suggestion coming back to the, to remove, yeah. One suggestion coming back to the reviewing process and like what is systems paper, can we review it and so on. It could be that we can integrate into the program a tutorial session. They did something similar in CVPR, but as a workshop for how to review papers. So we could have like something similar, like a tutorial on how to review and how to, for example, guidelines, what is a good systems paper, how to evaluate it. Something like this could be good, and it could like also give good guidance also for us to create better systems paper in general. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And one of the issues with, I guess, so systems papers, we're talking a lot about them. We don't have a lot of systems papers submitted, but the reviews, I don't know if it's because of the people that we pick as reviewers, but the reviews tend to trash them, just to be frank. And so we can train, some of you to review, but if just by the luck of the draw, one of the reviewers tends to be, not trained, you'll just, also get similar types of feedback. But I think resources online, I like the ideas of resources online or examples if we can find people who consent to releasing their reviews. But it's a very good point that we may want to do more about the reviewer training process.
But it's more than that, right? So this has been it's robotic science and systems, and since I've been involved at RSS, the systems, it's always been a constant discussion. Why are we not getting more systems papers? Why are we not reviewing it better? And I think it's a point now that the really strong systems papers take a long time. The work takes a long time. So this is not something you can do in a few months. This is typically work of years that culminates in one paper. And I think the community that does that have been disillusioned by robotic science and systems because they were not reviewed well. And now we don't get those papers. I don't know, Kris, you would have better numbers than me, but, and I think one of the things is to reach out to your colleagues who are doing wonderful systems work, and maybe other sides of your own research or your own labs that are doing systems work, and encourage them to submit. And on our side, it would be in making sure that the reviewers appreciate those kinds of papers, because those papers are, they are crucial for the field. They teach us a lot, but they're not a new algorithm necessarily. And that has been traditionally hard, and I think it's kind of like a chicken and egg. We're not getting those papers anymore. So now the ones we're getting are not, we don't really quite have all the reviews. So on one hand, I don't want to encourage people to submit their best work that will get trashed here. So hopefully that's not going to be the case. But it's a little bit of kind of and if you have ideas or specific people that we should kind of reach out to, any pilots we can try to doing, that is something that would be very much of interest to this community and also to kind of the leadership of this community, because those papers are amazing, right? So we'd like to see more of them.
I want to drop a kind of maybe strange suggestion just for getting brainstorming feedback. One thought is that we might want to take some sort of model like robotics and automation letters, in which we partner with a journal that focuses on more engineering heavy work, and say, well, you could submit your work to that journal, because these are a lot of times engineering disciplines that value that, like the journal model of publication, and then we could invite them to present their work at RSS. So we could have main RSS as well as RSS papers from Journal X, which are also presented at the same conference, so we at least get exposure to those folks. They get exposure to us, and you know, maybe that's one artificial way of trying to, you know, make this a little bit more, get a little bit more of these underrepresented fields represented.
And I'd say just one thing, which is that if you haven't read Kris's open letter to the community, he put a lot of thought into that. It's a very well argued discussion of the status quo, and it shows you a program chair who thought really hard about this. And so maybe we didn't get as many systems papers as we would have liked.
And failed.
Well, so, yeah, but I assure you, we did better than we would have if we hadn't had Kris who was looking out for those papers. So it's a known hard issue. But if you are someone who has some thoughts on this and you haven't read the letter, you should, I think. Lorenzo?
Yeah, so partially related comment. So I think that one problem in general with the review process, not only for RSS, not specifically for RSS, but for our community, is that the time is becoming so long that you need so many months to get a review for the conference, and then if you want to submit the extended version to a journal, it takes forever, and in particular for a student for whom the time is short by nature, it's a problem. And as you guys were saying, if you're writing a systems paper, then it takes 2 years to complete the job, and then you need to wait 6 months for having the reply from a conference, and maybe it's negative, and blah, blah, blah. So I was wondering whether we could think of, in particular for RSS, for which the quality of the paper is typically quite high, maybe of some different model, maybe, I don't know, some direct journal publications after acceptance or something like this to encourage and to help speeding up a little bit the publication procedure.
Well, so maybe this is an example of being raked over the coals. So there's several people in this room who are waiting for reviews still for the special issue from RSS 2021, and I'm aware of that. And I'll say that there are, unfortunately, large delays in the journal process, but it's often not the reviewers, and it's actually often not the editorial people on our side who are incurring those delays. And I think evidence of that is when you look at the review timeline for RSS compared to, for example, IROS, which was brought up. It's pretty rapid. I think actually we're not the bad actors in this situation.
No, of course.
But I don't know, you know, it's also a known issue in several of the journals. We can name names of journals that we know have a reputation. Let's not. But there's not that much I think we can do because after all, we're guest editors, right? So, so maybe what we need to do is perhaps think about what we can facilitate. So, for example, when we have mature versions, maybe we could somehow associate them with the robotics proceedings, things more quickly, things that we have control over, I think. I don't know if anyone else has.
Yeah, another thought about the kind of long runway for these systems papers. You know, the development process is very long. Perhaps there's some other mode of publicizing like intermediate work that is work in progress that can be somehow counted, and you have a presentation and you talk about your work in progress. I'm not sure what that would look like and what a half-done system, how that adds value to the conference, but it's a possibility. It's a possible mode that maybe Kostas and I can think about.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kris. I think I was going to say something very much on those same lines. So we've been talking a lot about like how you review systems papers, and I think another side of it is the question of like what does a good system paper look like and how do you write it. So I wanted to share an experience I had not with an RSS paper but another conference. I got a paper I reviewed a little while ago, and I think it was objectively a very poorly written paper, but an amazing system, which only became evident after looking at the very closely and seeing the like multimedia. And I think a big fact of this process is either people don't know how to write them, or it's a very fragmented group of people a lot of undergrads, and either we don't have consensus on what this paper needs to look like, or they have no clue how to write it. And we need to build up some framework here, and I don't know what it looks like.
I think we have even a definition issue, right, of what is a systems paper in the first place. We have referred, as examples, we refer to mechanisms, but it could be a pipeline, a software pipeline that puts together existing algorithms that does something new in terms of capability. So perhaps papers should self-identify as systems papers, yeah, and then have the guidance as well from our side. But yeah, it is a task, it seems, that we need to discuss about.
Rob?
Yeah, I think I wanted to suggest exactly what Kostas had just mentioned. So first of all, so David, I think David suggested early on that there were, we identify specific criteria against which systems papers would be evaluated. Authors could self-identify as systems papers to which those criteria would be applied. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but just putting it out there.
Okay, so I think we've got a question up there.
Yeah, so I had a couple of things I wanted to say. Firstly, I wanted to say I really appreciate the removal of a page limit. I think that's very helpful because it's, sometimes it's very hard to squeeze into exactly the page limit, but having just an extra paragraph makes things much easier.
Are you speaking as an author or as a reviewer, right?
Both, actually. I don't mind reading a slightly longer paper if it means it can be a little more lucid about what's happening. Secondly, I wanted to voice my support for more openness in reviews. I know there's a trade-off between anonymity and openness that's hard to manage. But the last thing that I wanted to say, and this is more of my suggestion, is I wanted to suggest thinking about adding a statement for authors about the broader impacts of their work and the ethical implications of their work. Obviously, everybody thinks that their work is going to make the world better in some way, but the things that we are doing are going to have extremely far-reaching impacts, and making it explicit that this is something that should be considered, at least at some level, both by the authors and the reviewers, I think is something that's worthwhile. Even though everybody's going to say, this is going to make things better, I think going through that motion is still worthwhile.
So just to be clear, you're saying you think that would be something for the authors to provide in a paper, not a review criterion?
I think that should be something perhaps either as a brief note at the beginning or end of the paper. Something like a cover letter, perhaps, would be another option, and not a enormously weighted review criteria, but perhaps should be mentioned in reviews.
Okay. Henny?
Thank you so much to all of you for putting on such an exceptional conference and everybody who was involved. I have seen a little bit of how the sausage is made, and I know that everyone puts a ton of time and care into the conference. So we really appreciate it. I wanted to talk about one thing that I think RSS does really well, and I'd love to see continue, and one thing that I think we could consider for next year. I love that RSS is single track, and I know a lot of conferences are under a lot of pressure to add more papers, especially as the number of submissions increases, and we want to be inclusive. And so I would just put in my vote for continuing the single track method structure, because I think it's really valuable. I also...
Yes.
Great. Solved for next year. I also really love the fact that we have short talks and then a chance to dive deeper in poster sessions. I found it a little hard to hear in the poster session. I know that space is always constrained and it's so hard to find places to put all these people. But I would love to see a situation next year, especially, I've been to Expo, it's quite large, where we can have maybe more space or maybe soundproofing between the posters to make it just a little bit easier to have those conversations.
That's a good point. I'm not sure that she's got someone she's carrying, so we're going to let her go first.
Okay. Sorry. Thanks everybody, by the way, for tolerating baby noises in the back of the room. Oh, thank you to everybody for tolerating baby noises in the back of the room. I just wanted to add to the systems paper discussion. So I was one of the people behind making the award for Seth Teller with Matt Walter and Nick and John Leonard. And we've been having this discussion about what is a system paper for a long, long time. One of the goals we had in making the award was that we didn't really know. We thought about trying to write down what the good system paper is then, and we didn't really know. So we decided, I was sort of thinking, we're gonna give some awards out, and now we have a corpus, right, of really good systems papers, award-winning papers at RSS. So for people asking, like, what makes a good systems paper, there's like an exemplar-based answer now that I encourage you all to check out. Thanks.
So the answer is data-driven, is what you're saying?
Of course.
Just sort of briefly following up on the question of systems papers, I know that a number of other conferences have developed alternate tracks to encourage papers that don't fit the traditional paradigm. So thinking somewhat of Alt-HRI and Alt-Chi, which allow non-standard tracks, as well as there's a design conference that allows works in progress submissions as a separate track. I'm not so much of a systems person myself, but I wonder if adding a track explicitly for works in progress or something like that would lower the sort of long-term risk for systems projects to be submitted, and if that's something we could explicitly use a model from other conferences to follow.
So one thing is, I will say, I'm going to echo what was said. They're really excellent workshops, and that is at least currently the venue for, I think, works in progress. There have been discussions about how much input the program chair should have over choices of workshops, or what sorts of things are selected for in the workshop selections. And so I think that probably varies from year to year, is I guess all I could say. Yeah, but I understand you're talking about a separate track in the main conference.
This is sort of now for something completely different point to raise, but it's, I don't know, quite close to my heart now and probably to other people's, is sustainability and the environment. Obviously, conference is an amazing place, like all these people coming together and sharing ideas, and that's kind of requires a lot of travel, and there will be a huge carbon footprint of that, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think it's important to consider things we can do while we're here to kind of mitigate that, and it was good to see things here like, I don't know, recyclable things next door, but also like the participation of virtual participants as well is, I think, something that's very good for that aspect, to allow people that maybe don't want to travel or can't travel to the conference for various reasons. And I kind of hope that in future, even when COVID is kind of a distant memory, hopefully, that's still an option for some people to attend a conference virtually and kind of get as much out of it as possible if they can't travel for whatever reason.
So I have a perspective on that from multiple conferences, and I think as much as I personally really do not enjoy virtual conferences as an attendee, I think it opened up access in a really amazing way, and I think all conferences will, hopefully, any conference that I have anything to do with will have a virtual option, so people would be able to participate somehow. Now, different conferences have different, just due to sizes, what you can do. So there are some things that work pretty well, some things, I mean, poster sessions are super hard to do as remote. But yeah, that's a conversation that needs to keep on, I mean, we're going to keep innovating in that space for people who can't or don't want to travel but still want to be involved. I think, yeah. I think that if there's a silver lining in COVID, that's it. The fact that now people can access these ideas much more easily from home. I don't know.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks for a great conference. So I think one point I want to mention is around submitting code. So whether, what's the story with anonymity? For example, submitting a GitHub link or somewhere else, like will the code be looked at? And how anonymous is anonymous? And I think from the advice we got, it seemed like a gray area where there's maybe some mixed up incentives as to what exactly is preferred. So I think just getting clear on the guidelines there would help, especially for systems papers, where maybe some of the value is in seeing the usage, the workflows, and so on.
Well, I think the Coral community is supporting something like this, and they encourage it, and I think there are ways to do it that are anonymous. You have to put some more effort. You have to not, perhaps giving an additional deadline of a few days for something like this may allow people to spend the time to make sure that there is anonymity, so it's like a repository that somehow it does not reveal. But I've seen it working elsewhere.
I also seen the opposite, right? So paper gets accepted, and then there's a reproducibility, like HSCC has that, right? The reproducibility badge that, there's code, someone can run it, and so on. But yeah, it's a good point, right? We definitely want to encourage that.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So I already talked to Kris about this, but I wanted to say it publicly, which is something I would really like to see at RSS, is the addition of an accessibility chair. So this is something that the Chi community and SIG-Chi has been working to try and get added to all ACM conferences. And it can be someone who, from the very earliest days of the conference, is thinking about things like, will people be able to hear at the poster session? How are we going to get ASL translation? What is the physical accessibility of the venue? So this is something that I really feel strongly we should be doing in the robotics community, especially as we think about accessibility and assistive technology as major applications of our work. We also should be getting more disabled people in the room and actually working on these technologies. And I think making sure our conferences are accessible is a really easy, well, maybe not easy, but is a really important step in doing that.
100% agree with you, 100%. And we were just talking about that right before the session in terms of, I think for me, one of the goals for this coming year is to try to codify some of these things such that, we'll never, we're not, I want to make the process, I want to have guidelines for these conferences in terms of kind of what are the main things of accessibility that you have to deal with, that you have to ensure exist, and also who are the experts to go and ask their opinion about what are the things that actually are needed, because I'm not an expert in that. But just long-winded, you're right, we're going to do it.
I will add, I run trainings for accessibility chairs. So
say again?
I run trainings for accessibility chairs. So I'm happy to share all of my resources as well.
Yes, please.
Let's share a rather unorthodox idea. So that kind of aims to tackle both the problem of not having enough systems papers, but also sort of tackles the positivity bias we have in academia that we only publish like positive results. So one way that we could possibly incentivize the publication of systems papers is to consider hosting a workshop of great ideas that didn't work, right? From our experience in our lab building the Trina system, for every great idea that we have like 4 systems that don't work until we get something that works, right? And in systems papers, usually you just keep working until it works. But if you had the chance to, okay, so we had this great design, we tried it, it didn't work. As long as you validate it properly, maybe presenting it in a workshop is useful. So you keep people from doing rework in the community just because it never left the lab. It's a weird idea, but.
Yeah, we had in Rome, there was a negative results workshop that I believe, Dylan, you organized, right?
I did,
yeah.
So
it was awesome. It was awesome. Yeah, so a workshop like that, it's a really lot of fun.
And I think we had a paper in this conference that had in the title negative results by Matei Ciocarlie's group. And this comes back to this community which is reviewing papers and submitting papers. I would definitely encourage people that come with strong statements that are negative and say don't try this. And then as reviewers you have to be open to this idea as well.
Hello. I wanted to echo the previous comment about broader impact statements and kind of forcing roboticists to think a little bit more critically about what they're actually building, both from a science and systems perspective. And I was wondering whether this kind of falls into that underrepresented areas that we would perhaps like to see more at RSS. There's a growing body of work, growing body of venues like FACT, Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency, that do a lot of really interesting work about how our systems might be applied to the real world. And I was wondering whether you have any thoughts about like how we can better invite that into our venue here as well.
So I'm not sure if I got everything you said, but I think, for example, picking up, one thing that has been discussed once was to do something a little like AAAI does, or AAAI does, where they invite some of the best papers from different communities. In fact, some years ago, some of the very best RSS papers were presented at AAAI for several years. So it may be that people who think hard about the transparency of a particular system that they're building, maybe if you're saying that there's a strong community around that, perhaps we should consider having a track where we invite the best of the rest, I think it's sometimes called. And that could be one subset that we consider. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I don't quite know how to move forward with that other than maybe to say perhaps, to say to everyone, which is when I was program chair, I did get emails from people saying, I think you should do this. And they were often very well thought out, very well argued emails. And so I would encourage you to do the same for the following year if you have some thoughts about something you think, some particular thing which is as precise as you've said, which we could try to incorporate in the program in some way. Micah, right? I think, are we out? How are we doing for time?
We've got 14.
Okay, here, go ahead.
So I'm here to continue beating the systems paper problem to death. Building on Ruben's comment and maybe a bit of a tangent. So Ruben's comment a few minutes ago regarding different tracks got me thinking and maybe on a bit of a tangent. So I think in the past we talked about things like adding videos as a way to highlight systems papers, and I think maybe that's a hard thing. I think one thing maybe we could do is try to recognize systems themselves, in addition to systems papers, as a more focused and maybe lower bar. Because I think there's a lot of good systems out there, but maybe not always the people to write about them. And if we have a way to either recognize papers that weren't accepted or to accept submissions or nominations of excellent systems, then we can start highlighting and building that community here again.
I'm not sure about this because in the end, you have to be able to communicate the benefit of the system in some form that can be easily passed along. I think we have supplementary material, right? We have videos that I think do influence the review process, where perhaps you can communicate the power of a system through a demonstration. But the way that perhaps I understood your suggestion, it may not be correct, is that perhaps we should have a lower bar on the manuscript side of the submission. I think we should have a requirement that the message and the benefit of that system is adequately supported by the manuscript.
I think we can do a bit of both, and I think I'm coming from a mindset of we need to find ways to include the people who are building good systems, in addition to finding ways to enable them to write good papers.
I think there's one at the top.
Hi there. I just wanted to give a big shout out to the Inclusion at RSS program, and a huge thank you to Henny and Kalisha who organized it. I think one thing that would be awesome for next year for the future Inclusion Fellows would be if there were like a poster session where all the Inclusion Fellows can present something. That's all.
Cool.
I'm just contributing a idea. I don't know if that works or not. So maybe we can do something like open source system. You kind of like have some like a website describing how to replicate your system on the other locations or other lab so that people can repeat your results in a short time or something like that. And that kind of paper maybe can be encouraged more to be published in conference like this or like a journal, something like that. So yeah, just the idea.
So I will say you have the power to do that, because when you review a paper, and I've seen many reviews that do this, they say one of the really great things about this paper is how replicable it is. Because I went to the website and I could download the code and I could run the code, and this really works. So we could recognize it in some way, impose a constraint, but in some sense that's already a value that if you think is important, we can all recognize.
Yeah, so I was just saying, like, maybe you can promoting some kind of ideas like this, because right now I don't feel like something like this really being like recognized or promoted. More like it's more like a personal thing, so like just individually doing such a thing. So yeah, that's the idea. Yeah.
And reproducibility of results, I think robotics is a very big issue that is discussed a lot, and it is harder than some of our neighboring fields like computer vision and machine learning, because some of the code is linked to a physical robot that may be very specific to the lab and is not easily transferable. But definitely, if there is a component that can be easily reproduced, we should encourage this. And again, as reviewers, encourage of using that code and trying it out.
Is there a question? No? Okay. Going once? Going twice? Okay, I think that's it.
So usually our tradition would hold that you close the RSS conference with a gong, but unfortunately a few years ago the gong was lost to the sands of time. So I'm just going to say it. Gong. Enjoy the workshops tomorrow. Have a safe trip back. And yeah, great to see everyone here.